So, Willem, good evening. Welcome.
Hi, good evening, Kevin. Hope you're doing well.
No, absolutely. And this is not your first time in the OneFM studio, but it's definitely your first time on the Safety and Security show.
That's right.
So, we have a lot of law enforcement, a lot of the neighborhood watchers, all the people that basically encounter these snakes. And now they're going to know after the show exactly what needs to be done.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah. So Willem, maybe let's just talk a little bit about yourself. I mean, obviously, this takes a lot of time catching snakes. I know in the break you were talking that in some seasons you actually catch one a day. But for a businessman, that must be quite difficult. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, so this is not my full-time job. I run Blaarburg Snake Rescue locally, but it's just me, and it's kind of a passion project or a hobby thing that I do. I have an intense love for snakes and other reptiles. So about 2 years ago, I went and did my courses and got my permits, and I started helping the community as a free service, going out and collecting the animals from their properties when they show up there and just moving them back into nature. But in my day job, I'm a software developer and a business consultant. I help people. Wow. I help entrepreneurs and startups automate their systems and automate their processes by using software smartly instead of having to employ more people.
Sure. So you're using smart software, but at the same time catching a live snake. For me, it's not so smart. But yeah. So you say you actually developed this passion. Is this from young, or is it something that you developed recently?
It's something that's built up over time. When I was younger, I didn't really have an interest in them, and even just 3 or 4 years ago, I was extremely scared of spiders and scorpions as well. But now I'm busy learning about spiders and scorpions too.
They're on my list of pet cases as well.
Well, no one's ever died from a spider bite in South Africa, so you don't have to worry about that, luckily.
Okay, so let's just pause there. I mean, this is now totally way off subject, and this is what I do in my show. They often talk about the most deadliest spider actually being a daddy longlegs. Would that be correct or not?
No, that's a common misperception.
Damn, so the only thing I knew about spiders is out the window.
You see, with snakes, spiders, all these creepy crawlies that people are kind of scared of, there are a lot of myths and a lot of misperceptions and a lot of false information about them as well. You often see these pictures doing the rounds on Facebook, for example, showing that if a snake has a cat's pupil, like a
Yes.
vertical pupil in its eye, then it's not venomous or it is venomous. None of those things really apply universally. It may apply to a very small area somewhere in the world, but you can't use those kinds of things as a guideline. And so the story about the daddy longlegs, for example, being that venomous, that's one of these kinds of myths that built up. They are venomous, but they can't do anything to you. They can bite you and it may itch a little bit, but that's it.
Okay, so the way the myth goes then, so now we know it's a myth, is that I was always taught that the daddy longlegs actually had a venom, but there was no anti-venom, and that these daddy longlegs can't actually bite because they've got very small mouths, put it that way,
Yeah.
or fangs, and the only place they can get is like between your fingers where the skin is soft. But the problem is once they bite you, then there is nothing to actually reverse that venom.
I've heard that exact same one as well. And Mythbusters, the TV show, the American TV show,
Right, yes, yeah.
they actually did an experiment with daddy longlegs in one of their episodes where they had a tank full of them, and the guys put their arms in there, left their arms in there for about 20 minutes so the spiders could bite them a bit, and they just showed that nothing came of it. The spiders can bite them, but the venom isn't dangerous to humans. A corollary with snakes would be a lot of people think that even though a boomslang is venomous, it can't bite you because its fangs are at the back of the mouth, not the front. It can only bite you on the pinky or something like that, which is not true because they can open their mouths 170 degrees, so they can actually reach you anywhere if they wanted to.
My goodness. Okay, so we have a full-time working person that gives up his time to rescue snakes. You started the organization Blaarburg Snake Rescue.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about that organization.
So I started this after I finished doing my courses and getting my permits a couple of years ago. One does have to be permitted, given permission by Cape Nature to capture and relocate reptiles like I do.
Okay.
There are a couple of us in Cape Town, probably more than 30 of us who do this kind of work, and we're all in touch with each other as well. So if someone calls me, for example, and I can't go help, I'll refer it to the other guys, and whoever is closest will go out and help with the animal. But yeah, I started Blaarburg Snake Rescue, and my idea there was that as I was learning about these animals and handling them, I may as well start creating video content. And so I make videos of every capture and release that I do. And when I do the release, I talk a little bit about the snake. I tell people about their characteristics, where they're usually found, what they eat, whether they're dangerous or not, what you need to do if you encounter them, and so on. And people seem to be loving it. I think I've got just under 10,000 page likes now.
My goodness. Okay, that's pretty hectic. And I actually went through your website. Your website is very well laid out. I saw that there was a lot of educational material. So
Yes.
it was very evident without me even knowing you going through it that what you're all about is education, saving the reptile, the snake, but at the same time making sure that people learn a lot about it.
That's the thing, and it's strange that for a country like South Africa, where we have a lot of dangerous snakes, snake education is lacking so much. Like, I can't remember that anyone ever did even a small little course with us in school, for example, about what to do if you encounter a snake or anything like that. And this is why these myths spread and why people don't always know what to do. And you hear some pretty horrible things that people do as well, especially with their pets. When the pets get bitten, some people believe you.
And I think this is where the problem actually starts, because, as you say, you don't hear much about education. You hear all the negative stories.
That's it.
And I mean, I actually had to laugh. One of the reasons why I invited you onto the show is going through the Facebook page where a snake was killed, and I think it actually was in the Melkbos area, or
Yes.
they tried to give us that impression. But I mean, seeing that dead snake, and all the comments was, let's you should rather burn the house down, kill it. A good snake is a dead snake.
Yeah.
And you can just see that the negative perception of these creatures.
There is, and it's kind of ingrained for some reason. Across cultures, across countries, people are scared of snakes. But they really don't have to be. You're much more likely to be hit by a car in South Africa, or to be in a house fire or anything like that, than to be bitten by a snake. Only about 10 people a year die from snake bite in South Africa, and those are usually people who can't get to a hospital quickly enough. As long as you can get to a doctor, you're probably going to be fine. I'm hoping that by putting all this content out there, and by more and more people going and doing snake handling courses, not necessarily to do what I do, but even just someone who's living out there in the middle of nowhere on a farm, to know what to do if they do encounter a snake. I'm hoping with education like that, that's going to become less and less of a problem.
I think it actually would. And we have Bella that actually called into the studio asking us, are snakes that are considered dangerous to humans also dangerous to animals and pets, or does this vary?
Yes, they would be. The dangerously venomous snakes you get in Cape Town are the puff adder, the Cape cobra, and the boomslang. If they bite a human, or if they bite a pet, it's going to have the same effect. The timeline may just differ a little bit, because especially with a small dog, everything may happen much faster. But alongside that, the listeners need to realize as well that snakes don't really want to bite pets or people. They're not aggressive at all. They don't chase pets or people. And if given any kind of chance to get away, they will always go away and try and hide. So that's the first thing you need to do when you see a snake, actually. Just step back, give it a bit of space, and make sure that it doesn't feel threatened. Because if it doesn't feel threatened, it's not going to do anything to you.
Really? Okay, because I know we taught when we were young, as soon as you see a snake, stand still, even if it's right there. So would you do that, or would you actually take that step back?
I would say move back slowly. If you're 5 meters away from any snake in the country, even a spitting snake, it can't do anything to you at all. So 5 meters is a safe distance, but it is important to stay at a distance where you can still see the snake. A lot of times people call me, and when I get there, they're hiding inside the house because they're scared of the snake that's in the garden there somewhere.
But that's pretty much the best place to be, is it not?
Well, the thing is, snakes are really good at hiding, and so in the 2 minutes that they may be in the house and they don't have an eye on the animal, it disappears and you can't find it. Once they've hidden somewhere, it's almost impossible to find them. So I always tell people, stay your 5 meters away, but stay out there and just keep watching it while you call me, and until I get there, and then I'll capture it for you.
Wow, fantastic. Yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit about the capturing in a short while. But maybe we can just then discuss the venomous snakes. You mentioned there were 3.
Yeah.
So if we can maybe just go through each one of them, and then basically what type of bite they give. If it's a hemotoxic bite or a cytotoxic.
Sure. So there's the 3 venomous ones, the Cape cobra, the puff adder, and the boomslang that we get around here. And then there's a non-venomous snake that's actually dangerous as well. It's the mole snake. A lot of people think mole snakes aren't venomous, so it's fine to pick them up and play with them.
Because that's exactly what, and Facebook is always my reference.
Yeah.
And it's always, don't worry about it, it's just a mole snake.
Well, you don't really have to worry about any snake. Like I said, unless you threaten it, it's not going to do anything to you. But with mole snakes, you should most definitely not try and pick it up, because they have a lot of teeth and they're very sharp. and a good bite from a mole snake will land you up in hospital needing stitches. So for the three venomous ones, the Cape Cobra, firstly, that's the one that's most easy to recognize. It's the only snake around the table view area really that makes a hood with its neck when it's standing up. So that's a typical cobra profile where the neck flattens out and it opens up a bit. It's just trying to look bigger, and it's telling you, watch out, I'm dangerous, back off. A Cape Cobra bite is neurotoxic, which means it affects your nervous system. When they bite a person and they do inject venom, which they don't always do, snakes can control their venom.
Okay, right.
But if they bite someone and they do inject venom, then paralysis slowly sets in. So you may get a bit of slurred speech at first, then you become droopy-eyed and so on. But that paralysis progresses to your respiratory system, so you stop breathing. And that is actually where the danger lies. So with a Cape Cobra bite, you want to get someone to a hospital as soon as possible. Preferably a hospital with a trauma unit, so they can put them on a respirator if need be. With any kind of snake bite, really, if you have to choose between going to a further hospital that has antivenom or a closer hospital that has a trauma unit, get to the one with the trauma unit. They can
at least stabilize and, look
That's
after
it.
the functions, yeah.
They can always drive in or fly in the antivenom if needed, but if they can stabilize the person, that's the most important thing. And we can talk about antivenom a bit more just now, but a lot of people are allergic to antivenom. So in many cases, they won't even give the bite victim antivenom at all. So that's a Cape Cobra, pretty easy to recognize. With all snakes, you can't just look at the coloration to recognize the snakes. You need to look at their behavior and the body type and the scales they have and so on. Cape Cobras are extremely color variant, so they can be brown, they can be blackish, they can be yellow, they can be brown with yellow spots. There are most color variant snakes in South Africa, so just purely based on color, you can't necessarily recognize them. The second one would be the puff adder, which we...
So just on the cobra, the male and female, would they always be... Are they usually the same color if they're from the same family?
Yeah, unless you've been trained, they look the same. With most snakes, it's difficult to tell the gender unless you actually have a special tool to test it with. With snakes like puff adders, for example, you can very clearly see that the males have a longer tail than the females do. But with most other snakes, it's tricky to see that. And also, most people aren't going to pick the snake up quickly and have a look at its tail.
That's not happening. Yeah. But you say the distinguishing feature of a cobra is that he basically flattens his head out and kind of stands up.
They make a hood. There's another snake that we used to get in Cape Town that also makes a hood, but they've been mostly killed off. There are a couple of them left around Cape Point, I believe, but it's very rare. And recently a couple were seen around Grabouw as well, I think. The rinkels. It's not a cobra, but it does also make a hood with its head, and it is a spitting snake. But they're so rare that I usually don't even mention them to people. Chances of encountering one of them are extremely small.
Unless you're in the Cape Point.
Unless you're in Cape Point.
Yeah, and tell me, when you say spitting, do they actually aim for your eyes, or?
There've been a lot of studies about that. I think the verdict is kind of out still. They generally aim at the prey, and they just spit at the prey. Something like the Mozambique spitting cobra, which we don't get here in the Western Cape, they spit a stream of venom.
Yeah.
And so with them specifically, it looks like they're aiming at the eyes, but they're really just aiming at the head. With something like a wrinkles, they don't actually spit a stream of venom, they spit a mist of venom. And that mist blows over to you, or even if you're standing on the other side of the snake, if the wind's going that way, it may still get to you. Luckily, we don't have to worry about spitting snakes too much here in Cape Town, but if you do ever encounter one and it does spit in your eyes or it spits in someone else's eyes, another myth about snakes is that you need to use milk to wash out your eyes, which is most definitely not the case. Milk has bacteria in it, which can worsen things. So ideally, you want to use water, clean water, just wash out the eyes for 10 minutes, then get to a doctor. If you don't have water, use any liquid that you'd be willing to drink, but last of all, milk.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
No, I'm not going to waste it on that. But now tell me, if the venom actually gets onto your skin, can your skin actually absorb it and have the same effect? Or
No, it won't do anything to you unless the venom actually gets into your lymphatic system. People sometimes think it's the blood system that it needs to get into, but it's actually a body system that's parallel to the blood system called the lymph system, where the venom needs to get into to have an effect. That's why doing something like tying a belt around your arm, if a snake bit you on your arm, for example, doesn't do anything. It restricts blood flow, but it doesn't stop the venom. The venom can still go through the lymph system.
Wouldn't it slow it down there and just buy you some more time?
It can slow it down, but what you're doing is you're restricting blood flow to that area and you're concentrating the venom in that limb. So if you put on a tourniquet like that, you may well lose the limb. It's not something you want to do. If you're a trained medic, what you can do is you can use something called a pressure bandage, which spreads out the pressure evenly over the limb. But unless you've been trained on how to do that, you shouldn't do that either. Whenever someone has been bitten by a snake, the only thing you can do as a man on the street is to get them to the hospital as soon as you possibly can.
I've actually got a listener that has just texted in now saying, "Are you short 10 minutes of water in Cape Town?"
Yeah.
So that is a problem. I mean, 10 minutes of water, that's about your 50 liters.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But I'm sure your friend will bring you some water afterwards.
Yeah. Okay, so the story of if a snake bites you, that you actually must take a knife and cut it and suck out the poison.
It'll do nothing at all. You back in the day, you used to get these snake kits as well with a little vacuum extractor and all that stuff. It doesn't do anything at all. It looks good in movies, and that's it. By the time you can actually do something to the wound, the venom has already spread through a lot of your body. So.
Yeah, now I always thought to myself, if I ever get bitten, I hope it's waist height. Yeah. Okay, so that's the Cape Cobra done and dusted. The wrinkles, you say we're not going to actually experience much?
No.
Yeah.
Very unlikely. The puff adder is a second venomous one. It's also an easy to recognize snake because of its very short and very fat body.
Mm-hmm.
The puff adder we don't really get in the table view area. They tend to occur more in mountainous areas. I caught one here once. A lady walked into a garage and the puff adder was lying on her windscreen. But I think that was a hitchhiker. It probably got onto the car or into the bodywork of the car somewhere else, and it traveled with her. Yeah, we don't really get them here. They're more in the mountainous areas like Somerset West and Hout Bay and so on. Puff adders have a very fast strike. They're known for how quick their strike is.
Yet I believe they're very sluggish snakes.
People think so. Normally they move very slowly, but if they want to, they can be really quick. They're not really fat. Although they're not really fat, that's all pure muscle.
Wow.
So they've got a very long strike range because of all that muscle and a very quick strike range as well. You don't want to get anywhere near them. Puff adders, unfortunately, don't move away. If they sense you approaching, they rely on camouflage to hunt.
Okay.
And so when you move closer to a Cape Cobra, for example, it's going to feel your movement through the ground and it's going to move. It's going to go the other way. A puff adder tends to stay in one place because it thinks you can't see it, and then unfortunately hikers sometimes step on them. But if you do see the snake there, again, if you give it space, it's going to go the other way and it won't do anything to you. Puff adder venom is cytotoxic, which means it's tissue destroying. If one of them bites you, then from that point outwards, the muscle and everything starts disintegrating.
Oh my goodness, okay.
And it's very important with a puff adder bite that you do get antivenom because the antivenom stops that process. It can't reverse it, so you need to get to a hospital as quickly as you can. But once they give you the antivenom, it stops that process and it doesn't happen any further. So if you get there quickly enough, and if it wasn't a bite on your chest or anything, it was on your leg or your arm, you may have a bit of a mark afterwards, but you should be fine.
Yeah, you've been saying through the show, if you get to hospital as quick as possible, how long is it going to take? I know it's going to depend on body size and weight and all the rest, but just if you have a thumb suck of a normal average adult, 85 kilograms that's been bitten, how long have you got, say, in the Cape Cobra before you start having that respiratory failure?
So you're right, it depends on metabolism, body size, various factors. But with a Cape Cobra on average, you've got about 30 minutes before you see the onset of symptoms. Not much time. A black mamba, for example, you've got 15 minutes, which is less. But a Cape Cobra, you've got generally around 30 minutes, although you don't want to bargain on that. You don't want to waste time. You do want to get to medical attention as quickly as you can. With a puff adder bite, you will start feeling intense pain immediately because it immediately starts breaking down the tissues. And then the third venomous snake in our area is the boomslang. Very pretty little snakes, very shy snakes as well, and very fast snakes.
And allegedly the ones that fall out the trees as you walk under them.
Nah, it doesn't happen.
Actually, no, that's a myth because I actually saw one of your Facebook posts.
No one's ever been bitten on the head by a boomslang just from walking under a tree. They're very shy snakes and they're very fast snakes as well, and they will also try and avoid people as much as they possibly can. They're also very hesitant to bite. So even though they are venomous and they're very dangerous, you really need to make them angry before they will try and bite you. So again, if you just leave the animal alone, just keep an eye on it, call your nearest snake catcher, they'll come and catch it, and you're not really in any danger. With any snake that you see, you just keep kids and pets away, keep your eye on it, and call someone. The boomslang venom is hemotoxic, which means it affects your blood system. Specifically, what it does is the venom binds with the little bits in your blood that causes clots to form. And so, if you're envenomated by a boomslang and you have a cut or a scratch or just natural tearing that happens inside of your body just from being alive, those wounds can't close up.
They will just continue to bleed.
They just continue to bleed, and it takes a very long time for the venom to actually start showing symptoms, but within about 24 hours or so, you start bleeding out. And so if you get bitten by a boomslang, you can't take the chance that it was a dry bite without any venom, because it's going to take 24 hours before you see any effects. You still have to get to a hospital as quickly as you can.
It's actually quite interesting. I've been thinking whilst you're talking, you talk about 15 minutes for the snake and 30 minutes for that, but I'm also being a member of the Wilderness Search and Rescue, we haven't had many snake bites on mountains. Because I'm thinking there is about the only place in Cape Town I can think of that you're not going to be able to access a medical facility quite quickly.
Yeah, it's rare. It's extremely rare. There are a lot of other things you need to worry about before you worry about snake bite. And if you do plan to go on a long camping trip or a hiking trip or something, it's always a good idea to have someone with you who knows first aid. Because with something like a Cape Cobra bite, for example, if you're out on the mountain and your buddy has been bitten, if you can give them CPR while you wait for the helicopter to come, they'll probably be fine. If you can just keep them breathing and the helicopter gets them to the hospital, they should be fine.
Sure. And tell me, how long does it take so with the antivenom, once it goes in, you talked about the cytotoxic bite, it immediately then stops the actual progression of tissue damage.
Well, it's not immediate, but it does stop it more or less from that point onwards. Antivenom is an interesting topic, though. There are two kinds of antivenom in South Africa. We've got one called the polyvalent, which works for a whole bunch of snakes,
right.
Cape Cobra, black mamba, puff adder, and so on. And then we've got a second one called the monovalent, which is just for the boomslang. And they make a separate antivenom just for the boomslang because it's so expensive to produce antivenom, and because boomslang bites are so extremely rare. But in general, you can't really carry the antivenom with you if you go anywhere. You can't really keep it at home because per vial, it's very expensive and you may need multiple vials once you've been bitten. So if you go to a hospital, for example, with a Cape Cobra bite, the doctor will look at the situation and decide whether they're going to treat you symptomatically or whether you do need antivenom. Mm-hmm. And if you need antivenom with a Cape Cobra bite, they may give you 8, 9, 10, 12 vials, depending on how old you are and the extent of the bite. And you're looking at 5,000 to 6,000 rand a vial in that case. So.
And tell me, do all hospitals carry these antivenoms, or is there only specific hospitals in the Cape Town area that will stock that?
So in Cape Town, the Tygerberg Poison Centre usually has antivenom, but it also differs from week to week, month to month. Antivenom does have a short shelf life, so it expires and it gets used up and not restocked and so on. In general, as long as you just get to a hospital with a trauma unit, like I said, they can keep you going until they source antivenom from somewhere and have it brought to them.
Sure. I know amongst the private hospitals, they've each taken in turns to carry a small stock of antivenom.
Yes.
Then the whole idea is that when they need it, then they will actually join together. And I think it's one of the fewer times where you'll find that the different opposing hospitals actually work together on this one.
Yes.
But because it is actually such a cost-saving measure.
Yeah. Yes.
So you did mention a little bit earlier that some people are allergic to antivenom. So why would that be?
I can't explain the medical reasons behind it to you, but antivenom is made from horse serum. It's made from horse blood that's been purposely envenomated with snake venom.
Do they actually get the snake to bite the horse then?
Horses are very resistant to snake bite, yes. So they get the snakes, which are specially bred for this, to bite the horses. They extract the serum with the antibodies from the horse blood, and they make the antivenom from that. But somewhere in there, some people are allergic to the serum. And so
I know there's a lot of people allergic to eggs.
To
eggs as well. So
yes, for like vaccinations, right?
That's it. Yeah. So maybe a similar reason.
So what can happen if you carry antivenom with you, if you go on, say, a camping trip and your buddy gets bitten by a snake and you inject him with an antivenom, it may be the antivenom that actually kills him, because his reaction to that could be worse than the snake bite. Yeah. So it should always only be administered by doctors in a hospital or a clinic setup where they've got all the other drugs and equipment that they need to help you through it if you do have an allergic reaction.
Sure. Yeah, I want to talk more about snakes, but I think as we're on the topic of treatment of snakes, I know a lot of people say that if you are bitten by a snake, you need to kill it so that you can take it with to the hospital.
No, you're putting yourself at risk there. Either you or your friend, if you try and catch that snake and kill it, or catch it and put it in a bottle or something, chances are you're going to be bitten again. The snake's already angry and is already defensive. So the best thing to do is, if the snake is still around and you can, from a safe distance, do take a photo with your cell phone.
Take a selfie.
just take that along, but don't try and catch the snake, because there are only 2 antivenoms, and because the difference in symptoms between a boomslang bite and the other snake bites vary so much, the doctors should be able to look at the symptoms and decide which antivenom to give you.
Making a lot of sense. And tell me the other type of snakes that we would commonly find in the Tableview, Melkbos, Smolnerton areas?
So we've got loads and loads of mildly venomous and non-venomous snakes in the area. Mildly venomous in this case means they're venomous to their prey, like frogs and mice and so on. But if they bite a pet or a person, they won't really do anything to you. In West Beach, for example, we get a lot of rhombic egg eaters. They're snakes that barely have any teeth, but they live exclusively off of reptile and bird eggs.
Right.
They do have quite an attitude, though. The listeners can take a look at my Facebook page to see some videos of them. When you approach them, they curl up and they rub their scales together to make a very loud hissing noise, and they pretend to snap at you, but they don't really have any teeth. They can't do anything to you. It's just to scare you off. We get a lot of them up there. Then throughout all of Tableview, really, we get herald snakes and brown house snakes. Are those mildly venomous? They're completely the herald snake is mildly venomous, but the brown house snake is non-venomous. In the flamingo flay area, we get a lot of brown water snakes.
Right, yeah, because of the flays, yeah.
Yes, they live off of tadpoles and fish and so on, and they're not venomous at all. And then there's about 20 other species of small little harmless snakes: the aurora house snake, the olive snake, and so on. It can be difficult to recognize the differences between them unless you've been trained. That's why I always tell people, don't pick up snakes. I had someone today actually who called me. They called me and said that they caught a snake at their place of business, and they put it in a bucket. And can I please come and fetch it and just move it somewhere? And I asked them to send me a photo, and the photo they sent me was of the snake lying on their hand and on their arm, a photo they had taken. And they told me, here, I think it's a mole snake. And I had to tell them, that's not a mole snake. A mole snake doesn't look like that. Luckily, it was a harmless snake. It was a slug eater. But it's very easy for something like that to happen with a Cape Cobra. So don't ever pick up any snakes unless you've been trained on how to identify them and how to actually handle them.
And are you able to identify a snake by a good photograph? Would that be good enough for you?
If it's a good photograph, you can, yes. What guys who've been trained on this do is we look at the area that the snake was found in, firstly, because snakes do occur in specific areas. Okay. Then we also look at the body shape, especially the shape of the head, the kind of scales that the snake has. Some of them have smooth, shiny scales. Some of them have non-reflecting, keeled, rough scales. We look at any patterning that it may have. We look at the behavior of the snake. Coloration does play into it as well, although that can vary a lot. But all of those things put together give you a pretty good idea of what snake it would be.
I think it's in the Kuberg Nature Reserve and the Kuberg facility itself. I believe there's a lot of boomslang in that area.
There is, and in Melkbos, most of the snakes I capture are actually boomslang, and it's usually close to the reserve area because they come in from there into the gardens looking for food and water and shelter and so on. Now and then I would get a Cape Cobra there, but for Melkbos, mostly boomslang, which is a good thing because, like I said, they're very shy. The moment they see a person, they're going to go the other way as quickly as they can. I've actually had to run over a couple of lawns to catch a snake that decided to come down from a tree.
He's on his way out. So maybe just take us, I mean, you're not going to turn us into experts tonight. In fact, you're not even going to get me catching one. But just how do you approach a snake yourself? and actually capture it?
So there are special tools that you use to capture a snake and to handle a snake. No, please don't. The first and most obvious thing would be you need some kind of container to put it into. So some guys use pillowcases, some guys use buckets, some guys use tubes. I quite like to use buckets because when I make my educational videos afterwards, I can stick a camera in there, talk about the snake, then take it out and let it go. Then you need something to actually pick the snake up with, and you get two main tools for that. The first is called a snake hook. It's just a long metal rod with a V-shaped hook at the end, and there's a very specific technique that you get trained on called hook and tail, where you grab the snake by the tail and you pick up the front third body with the hook on the other side. And then because the snake is lying on the hook and you've got the tail in your other hand, they can't actually turn around and get back to you. They won't be able to reach you. So you can control them very well that way. And also because snakes are not aggressive, every now and then the snake may fall off the hook and you just pick it up with the hook again and you get it over to the bucket and put it back into the bucket. The other tool that snake catchers use is called snake tongs. Now, these are very dangerous because you can hurt a snake very easily. They've got very, very thin, delicate ribs, almost like fish ribs. So if you use tongs and you use them incorrectly, you can squeeze the snake too hard and you can break its back or you can break its ribs. And you may think you're doing a good thing by releasing it back into nature, but it's probably going to go and die a painful death somewhere. Tongs are used in exceptional cases where you need to get a snake out of a very difficult location, like high up in a tree or out of a narrow gap or something like that. Usually what I would do if I need to use tongs is I'll get the snake out of that difficult area, and then immediately I switch over to a hook and I just hook and tail it and I get it into a container.
And tell me then obviously your main purpose and the reason why you're actually going out is so that you can safely release that snake. So what
That's
areas do you release these snakes in?
With most snakes, it's best to release them as close as possible to where you found them, especially with the harmless ones. Like if I take a...
Yeah, madam, have your snake back.
Well, some snakes, like slug eaters, for example, they're useful to have around. Slug eaters are called the gardener's friend. These little snakes, they find slime trails, and they follow the slime trail until they find the snail, and they pull the snail out of the shell and they eat the snail. So if you've got a lot of plants in your garden, you actually want slug eaters around. And I've had cases where I explain to people what they do, and they ask me to leave the snake there. Otherwise, if they do want me to take it away, with a harmless snake, it's in the nearest suitable habitat. So the nearest bit of parkland or the nearest bit of flay or so, I would go and leave it there. With a dangerous snake like a Cape Cobra, I'll go a little bit further. So say in Tableview I catch a Cape Cobra, I may go out to the Blauberg Nature Reserve, for example. I've got an arrangement with them to release a certain number of snakes in there every year. But yeah, generally as close to where it was found as you can. You don't want to take it further because there have been a couple of studies that have shown that snakes get very used to the area where they were hatched and where they grew up. And if you take them too far away, they don't know where to go and they don't know where the shelter is and the water is, and they tend to die.
Sure. And tell me, do you have any scarp steepers in Cape Town?
We do. They're one of my favorite snakes, yeah.
Is it? Yeah, well, I definitely know you do have one because I actually bought one down from Cathcart quite a few years ago.
Okay.
And escaped. Yeah, listen, his name was Herbschlim. The time has just gone 6:34 and you're listening to the Safety and Security Show with myself, Kevin Jones. And in the studio tonight, we will be chatting to Willem from Blauberg Snake Rescue. As we are running out of time, Willem, I think we must just quickly look at what education you offer from your organization.
Sure. So I don't do snake shows or go out to schools and do snake presentations and things like that. I don't have the permits for that. Okay. I may apply for that in time. But if any of the listeners do want someone to come out and do a bit of snake awareness talk, do a demo with a couple of live snakes and so on, they're welcome to contact me and I can put them in touch with people who can do that all throughout Cape Town. And then in general, if you're keen to learn more about snakes, there are a couple of really good books out there. People can contact me. I'll send them some titles and authors. And also they can go onto my Facebook page or my website. Just search for Blauberg Snake Rescue. Right. I've got loads and loads of videos on there and little info sheets they can save on their phone and so on, just showing how snakes behave and what snakes do and what they look like and what you need to do and all of that.
Right. And tell me, if a person is interested in actually catching snakes? Is there like a snake catching course somewhere?
Yes, there are two organizations that present snake handling courses in Cape Town. The first is the African Snakebite Institute. They do a course in Stellenbosch every 2 or 3 months, I think.
Okay.
And then the other one is the Cape Reptile Institute. They do a course in Kuils River. If the listeners contact me, I'll send all the details for that as well, and they can go and do one of those courses. And then should they want to do what I do afterwards, I can explain to them how to apply for the permits and all that stuff as well.
Okay. And how long are these courses roughly?
The African Snakebite Institute course is 1 day for the basic version, 2 days for the advanced version, and the Cape Reptile Institute course is a 2-day course over a weekend.
Okay, great. And I know that you are a resident somewhere in this area, and this is your main focus. Now, what happens if I'm in an area like Kuils River, Bellville? How am I going to get hold of a slangevanger?
So there's a website, snakeremoval.co.za. It's a free website. If you go on there and you search for the area that you're in or the area that you're planning to go on holiday in or anything like that, it will give you a couple of contact numbers for the closest snake catchers. Okay. So it will tell you this guy is 10 kilometers away, this guy is 15 kilometers away, this guy is 5 kilometers away. Here's all the details. So what I recommend people do is to go onto that site and see who is nearest to them and save a couple of those numbers on their phone. And don't save it under the people's names, because in the moment you don't remember names. Save it as snake or snake catcher or something like that.
Right. Okay, so everything comes back down to your Facebook page, very informative, and your website. I mean, I went through it myself. But just give us the addresses so that the listeners can go and actually look for it.
So the website is bloubergsnakerescue.co.za. It's BLOU. And the Facebook page is also Blouberg Snake Rescue. If you just search for that on Facebook, you'll find the page.
Okay, and you take calls 24 hours a day?
I do. I'm available 24/7, and even when I can't go out and do a capture myself, all of the snake catchers are in touch with each other all the time. So if I can't go, I'll refer to whoever is closest and they can go out and do it.
So this is then really a passion for you then, that you guys go to such lengths to go and remove a snake?
It is. We really love the animals, and we try and contribute to research as well wherever possible. So most of the guys who go out and capture and relocate snakes, like I do, for example, collect information about where it was captured, what kind of species it was, maybe what gender it was, all that stuff. And this information gets sent through to the universities for their census data and their research projects and so on. It's very much a passion thing for us.
Fantastic. You really bring it out that that you care a lot for these. So how does it make you feel when you actually look on Facebook and then you see a picture of a dead snake that had his head lopped off with a spade?
It's sad, and you do see it often, but it's often a learning opportunity as well. You usually don't see the same person posting a dead snake picture multiple times. They may do it once because they didn't know what to do, but then after they've been told how to deal with it in the future in a safe way, right, because trying to kill it is actually the most dangerous thing you can do. Once they've learned how to deal with it in a safe way, the next time they know how to do it properly. So I see it as a chance to educate people, but yeah, it's always unfortunate to see it. It's like someone who does a dog rescue, they don't want to see the mistreated dogs.
No, absolutely, yeah. But thank you very much for taking your time this evening just to tell us a little bit about the snakes in the area. And I think the most important thing we want to get from the show is that there are people that are out there that are more than willing to come out and catch the snake. I know the numbers are at your local police station. They've also got it posted at the neighbourhood watches, both the Parklands and the Tableview neighbourhood watch, as well as Milnerton and Edgemead, you name it. They've all got the numbers. But failing which, you can just go and Google Blouberg Snake Rescue, and you will actually be directed both to their Facebook page and to their website. And there you'll be able to get Willem's number. And as you heard, if he's not available at that moment in time, there is definitely somebody else that will come through. But I think what we want to do is not kill these snakes. They have a purpose in life. They're sharing the planet with us, and Willem is the guy that will come out and actually just rehome him for you. So Willem, from us at 1FM, thank you once again for joining us in the studio. We most appreciate it.
Thank you very much.